Hi, it's Josie, and today I'd like to talk to you about dressage whips, how we hold it, and then most importantly, how to swap from one hand to the other without interfering with your horse. That's a very important skill. A dressage whip is a little longer whip. It's not a short flapper whip, it's a longer whip because we'd like to get back and reinforce our leg aid with it. But before we can do all that, we need to know how to hold it. How do we hold it? I've seen people hold their dressage whip right up there. I've also seen them hold them down there. What you'll find is your whip has a balance point on it, a bit like a kitchen knife does, where it feels the most weightless in your hand. Okay, so you need to find that bit on your whip because it shouldn't fit. Here I can feel it's actually dragging on the bottom part of my hand. If I move it up here, it's pulled down onto my thumb, because the way you hold a dressage whip is literally in the middle of your hand with your hand around it. You don't grip it as in hang on to it, because that's going to make all of your arm tight and affect the connection you can have with your horse. It just sits in your hand very, very lightly. If you have a whip without a knob on top, you're going to keep dropping it, I promise you. So that's what to me, that's what that knob's for. So if it slips a bit, it doesn't fall through my hand and I can move it back up. So it should sit across the palm of your hand in the crook there with your hand wrapped softly around it, because you've got to add your reins into that hand as well. So how do we hold the reins and the whip? So we hold our reins in the correct way, with the reins between our little finger and our ring finger and up over our index finger, and our whip just sits in there. Now when I'm holding the reins, I've got a good feel on the reins, but you can see that I'm not gripping my whip. It's actually sitting in my hand there. It's not sliding anywhere. You need a whip with a bit of grip on the handle in some form so it doesn't keep sliding. These little crystals not only look pretty, but they hold it there. So that within my hand there, I'm holding my reins, but my whip is not gripped really tight, because that would also mean I'm squeezing the rein, which is not nice for the horse's contact. So once you've got the way you hold it right in your hand, now every whip is different because it depends on the weight. This particular whip, I probably like to have it there with about that much poking out. If I go any further down there, as I said, I can feel it drop. The weight drops onto my little finger. If I push it up here, the weight drops onto my thumb. So when it's down here, I feel like the whip is doing that. When it's up here, I feel like the whip is doing that. And it's got to be just balanced so it just sits there. Where you want the whip to sit, sorry Rebel, you're going to have to move a little bit, mate. Can you move? I know you're having a nice snooze in the sun. Good boy. So where you want the whip to sit depends on a lot of things. Now there's a train of thought that it should be 45 degrees to the ground, but I think that all depends on you as a rider and how long and short your arms are. And just a little tip, when I'm going to not use my whip and I'm doing something else, I pop it in here and close my leg on it so that I don't have to put it down somewhere or I don't drop it. So if you're holding your reins correctly, now I've done a video on how to hold your reins and how to use your reins, and I'm going to link that up here and down in the description. But if you're holding your reins correctly, there should be a nice straight line this way. Your wrist should not be kinked that way, that way, that way, or that way. And so when you're holding a whip, you need to keep your hand in that position as well. That is the correct position to hold your whip in, because the most important thing I have with my horse is a connection with his mouth, a soft connection with his mouth where I don't interfere with his mouth. So when you're holding the reins correctly, that is the angle that the whip is going to sit on. So I've got a nice straight line here from my hand, and if Rebel was actually a little bit rounder, it would be a straight line to his mouth. And so if I have the whip in my hand, where's it going to sit? I'll try not to move my hand and I'll sit the whip there. So that is where my whip should sit. Is it 45 degrees? I actually don't know, but I've seen people try to carry it here and here Now, if you just come and have a look at what happens just to my wrist when I do that, that will be very interesting for you. So if I want to hold it, look what happens to my wrist. It is as stiff as buggery, and I will not be soft on my horse's contact. If I hold it up here, look what's happened to my wrist. It's stiff. There's no giving in that wrist. What you need to do is get your hand position correct first. Pop the whip in there without moving your hand position. Whoops, that's too high. And that is the position my whip sits at. Can I access his hind legs with this? Yes, I can. So usually we are using a whip to access a hind leg on a horse. Most of the time that we want to access a hind leg is when we're on a circle. And so therefore we usually want to access the inside hind leg. I have explained to you why that is in my Trot Diagonals video, and I'll link that one up here and in the description as well. You can go and see that. So therefore we need to be able to change the whip from one side of the horse to the other without interfering with the horse. Now, most of the time you're riding on a contact, and if you're further along, you're actually riding your horse on the bit, and the last thing you want to do is interfere with that connection that you get with your horse. That connection to me is probably one of the most precious things I've got, and I don't want to interfere with it. So you need to change the whip from one hand to the other without changing the feeling on the horse's mouth. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So how do we do that? So practice it without any reins or any contact on the rein to start with, because that will allow you not to worry about interfering with your horse's mouth. How I do it is when the horse is on the bit and I'm riding, but for demonstration purposes and a way you can practice this, just do it on a loose rein. So I've got my whip in this hand, I've got my hands how they should be. Hopefully, Rebel, keep your head over there. So you swap your reins into the hand that has the whip in it, and I use these two fingers. So as I come over here, I grab that rein with these two fingers. If I'm riding like this, then I do bring my wrist up a little, just softly, everything's softly, nothing's tense, to bring the whip to a 90-degree angle. I reach over with this hand, I grab it, I bring it over, and then I grab the rein, and then I usually have to push the whip down. It depends on, you don't want to move your hands too much. So let's do that again. So I'm riding along. I will show you this going in a minute. I'm riding along. I want to change the whip to my left hand. I put the rein both reins into the hand with the whip. I don't use one finger, I use two. I don't know why, it's just a habit I've gotten into. So that's tucked under there. This comes to 90 degrees, my hand goes over, it flips that out, and then I grab that rein. So I've got my horse on a contact, it's a long rein one here. What I'm going to do is put both reins into the hand with the whip, under there, 90 degrees, pick it up, swap it over, and then push it down. So let's do a change from the outside to the inside on a circle. We'll do it in walk. So both reins go into the hand that has the whip in it. Under my fingers there, whip comes to 90 degrees, hand goes over and then brings the whip in. So now we'll do it in trot. Both reins into the hand with the whip, whip to 90, hand over, comes over. I hope that helps you. It's something you're going to need to practice, and then it should become quite easy. Just remember, in the beginning, you're probably going to feel like you're all thumbs. See you later.